Let's see if all of the sending data online. Let's go. So, hopefully we don't pull another one like last time where the microphone is not working, but I don't think that will happen. But while everybody fills in,
Yes.
Thank y'all for, again, another episode of Eavesdrop and joining us. And today, unfortunately, we won't be taking call-ins this time around. Next time around, we will. If you want a specific call-in video, just let us know in the comments so that we can double back around, because we want to make this one a little bit brief so we can get to the birthdays. Shout out to cousin Leslie, whose birthday it is, so we gotta prioritize time. But for everything else though, as we all know, just please help us out by liking the video and sharing the video. It goes a super, super, super long way. And we sincerely appreciate it. Our voices are the tool in which we're trying to use to bring about change, and these conversations are very important. But today, though, what we are talking about is, as y'all see in the title, are we sailing? Are we moving out? Are we crossing the oceans? Are we #manifesting? Are we getting to the goals? Or, as a community, are we tricking the money? Are we misguided in where we're going? Have we dropped the bag trying to pick up other bags that may be out of our reach? And I asked that question because we recently saw Lil Wayne come out, and he sold his masters. I was surprised to see that myself. So I said, we also know that No ID came out. We'll get into that a little bit later. But just the idea of you have people who a lot of people aspire to, and have cemented themselves in this industry, making classics that we all love, that we all listen to, in most cases, that crosses racial boundaries, gender boundaries, and so on. And so these are like very pivotal people. But in the midst of the pandemic, in the midst of everything that's going on and happening right now, we've seen, again, people sell their masters, sell basically their property to liquidate. So before we go into the first article, what do you think about like the whole ordeal of not just Lil Wayne selling his masters, but others, again, like No ID, and you said Taylor Swift as well.
Scooter Braun sold hers.
And so, and she's in a legal battle, if I'm not.
Yes.
Yeah. So just in regard to the whole situation in terms of people selling their masters, and we'll get into a story later about Kanye, who's also giving back masters. What do you make of this? Or he says allegedly. But what do you make of it though?
Okay, I'll put them in two buckets. Kanye is in a different bucket. He's the diversified portfolio so that you can have multiple revenue streams. And I'll use that as a way to dovetail into the other bucket, as in they're selling their masters because expenses is outweighing their income. So they need to find new revenue streams. And when you see people aspire to be No ID, aspire to be a Taylor Swift or Scooter Braun, because not everyone wants to be in front of the camera. When they aspire to be these public figures, and these public figures are showing you the way that they maintain their lifestyles, or lifestyles that they show you, is that they have to give up their intellectual property right. That means money is drying up, opportunity is drying up. That means that COVID has affected not only Main Street and Wall Street, but it has affected the people who entertain both. So brick and mortars have suffered. The restaurant industry has suffered because
Macy's,
JC Penney, that in person, that real life experience is something that we can't discount in a digital age, and we see that we can't. And those who aspire to be these figures have to understand that those opportunities or those doors and windows that led a No ID to where he is, that led Taylor Swift to where she is, that led Scooter Braun to where he is, Lil Wayne to where he is, they're done. They're exhausted. Those resources are not there. Those opportunities are not there. So it's important to become very real about what is there, not what you wish to be there.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. And to your point about before I jump into the article, you mentioned and brought up the importance and the fact that we cannot substitute the in real life experience. And you know, I work for the commission on Arts and Humanities. And so like that's something that everybody, and we see on our day-to-day work, that everybody is grappling with because we're dealing with individual artists and artist organizations. So if you are doing like plays and your work is centered in and around engaging people live, it takes a toll. And unfortunately, you know, it is a wave and it has hit everybody. Fortunately for larger conglomerates like the NFL, they can survive because they've also seen hits when it comes to like ticket sales and go ahead.
But I wanted to jump in there especially for the audience. That's where I'm really talking about is that when you see someone that has money having to liquidate to someone who has more money, it's like, why is a person who has more money want to consume someone else? Why are these corporations consolidating their revenue streams? It's like, what is it that they're trying to survive themselves? We don't talk about corporate debt in America because we only like to talk about household debt in America.
The regular, the surfy surfs.
Yeah, we don't like to talk about that, but corporate debt is a huge issue. And as we talk about these industries changing, a lot of them are going to have to spend a lot of money to survive China.
Did we talk about that?
No, we didn't talk about that. We talked about that off mic. But
okay. We should, because that's definitely gonna come down. But getting into the first article, if everybody can see, we looking at Lil Wayne sold his masters for $100 million. And relatively speaking, you know, $100 million sounds like a lot. And this is why it caught me off the bat. And again, you are comparing this to who he is, what he's done, the impact of the records themselves. And we're talking about $100 million, which isn't a lot, especially when you talk about the expenses that Lil Wayne has accrued over a lifetime. And I just think it's interesting too, because when you talk about diversifying revenue streams, he may have some, but again, those other industries are also taking hits. But says Lil Wayne has reportedly sold his rights to his masters for $100 million, according to TMZ. The Amelie MC sold his masters to UMG, Universal Music Group, back in June, but it is just being brought to public knowledge due to a pending lawsuit. It's lawsuits, man. Additional details surrounding the deal are currently unknown. Fans on social media were shocked by the news, especially because it came at a time when a lot of artists are fighting to obtain their rights to masters. And I'm gonna ask one once I get done, because it's interesting in what we said about like Kanye and everything else that's going on and around us at the same time. So his alleged deal comes just months after Kanye West tried to buy back his masters from Universal. I'm not sure if everybody saw that whole Twitter debacle with Kanye posting his legal contracts. I think people compiled them, and now you can really just access them. And he went on to, just go on rants, even in and around the documents themselves. And again, the Jesus King rapper said his efforts were blocked due to multiple contracts he signed. He later tweeted over evidence of the legal documents, which you just mentioned. I need to see everybody's contracts, the Universal and Sony. He tweeted, I'm not going to watch my people be enslaved. So he's saying, you know, there is leverage, a lot of leverage that you use in not having your masters and somebody else owning your masters. I'm putting my life on the line for my people. The music industry and the NBA are modern day slave ships. I'm the new Moses. He then wrote, my kids gonna own my masters in a follow-up tweet. It has been an interesting year for Weezy. Back in October, he took to Twitter to show his support for President Donald Trump ahead of the election, which he caught a lot of flack for. And besides what he's done so far with criminal reform, the Platinum Plan is going to give, you know, community real ownership, which of course we disagree with. He listened to what he had to say and assured he will get it done. So with that being said, you know, seeing Kanye battling for his masters, seeing a lot of artists battle for their masters. We had Megan Thee Stallion come out and had some discrepancies over owning the rights to her music. And this has just been an ongoing theme within the music industry across all different genres, right? And we're talking about a person who has theirs apparently because they're saying that he sold them.
Mm-hmm.
Going back to something that you said earlier about, you know, the markets themselves and again, the money drying up and you're liquidating in that sense, but you're also more than liquidating, you're giving up a lot of leverage when it comes to your brand, your image, and other ways that you can build upon that portfolio. Because if you own it, you can have you can make certain deals based on that in terms of expanding that brand. So it's like, okay, you had these songs, you can do whatever you please with them, whether they be like in commercials or movies and stuff like that. You just have way more leverage over it. What do you make though of while we're in this era of wealth calcification on the other side, where we see like you said, larger businesses consuming the smaller businesses where, like, again, for example, you had Jeff Bezos who is or was trying to consume Amazon, and then also them getting into it with like UPS as well in terms of infringing on the shipping. How do you, or where do you see this going and it leading to down the line as we talk about transition? Because of course, everybody can sit right here and say and go back and forth for whether it was a good deal or a bad deal. I've heard people say, oh, well, you know, you can't just sit on it forever. You got to make a move. And again, this is money versus having a portfolio. But what do you see as the consequence of the decision to sell your masters and the pattern that we're seeing with people beginning to sell their masters in this moment?
Okay. First, I'll say you will have to become a sophisticated consumer of corporate law. Because, and the reason I say that is that you have to know the value of what it is you hold and how you can leverage that value in the market to ascertain that value. What I mean is that if you have your masters, you got to be able to get your masters in front of people. You got to be able to get it into a point where you got to consume. You know how Dame Dash is direct to consumer, direct to consumer, direct to consumer. If you do direct to consumer, you won't have the same level of exposure because now you're competing with those larger corporations for space in the consumer's mind. So market share, bringing it back to the dichotomy or the space between a Lil Wayne who sold his masters for $100 million and a Kanye who wants his masters back. Let's look at these two different performers, but let's look at them as different businessmen. Wayne has always been about product. He's a front man. He's great at putting the product forward. He's great as a lifestyle person. I put Wayne as the same bucket as a Wiz Khalifa. He has his own ecosystem. We don't know. They say he sold his rights for $100 million, but we don't know how Lil Wayne's, I don't know his actual name is, what is it, Dwayne Carter? Dwayne Carter's portfolio is. We don't know his financial portfolio. So, and he's been in the business for a long time. So he's been around business managers, CPAs, and everything else. What I'm saying is that when you're Dwayne Carter and you have decades in the music industry, your masters may not matter to you as much as it matters to someone who's like a J. Cole or someone who doesn't have the same level, because his $100 million could have been him liquidating that $100 million to put it somewhere else, meaning that he may not be out on the streets, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what I'm saying, why I'm putting it that way, is that you have to contextualize it. Like Dwayne Carter has years in the music industry. The same way Kanye, and this time I'm gonna bring him in, has years in the music industry. Kanye has talked about in the Joe Rogan interview how music loses him money. And this is where diversification of your financial portfolio matters. Because for someone who's like the baby, his main revenue stream is his music.
Mm-hmm.
He's not at the level of a Jay-Z where he has product extensions and brand extensions where he can go further and he can go beyond just music. Because what's happening, and I'm going to localize it to music, what's happening in music is that people are able to get their merch across. Fashion is also changing.
Yes.
People are able to do their concerts, touring. When Cardi like coronavirus, and she was talking about them pockets, she was being real.
Mm-hmm.
So for someone that's like the baby and something like that, they don't have that option. But someone who's like a 2 Chainz, they even bring in 2 Chainz. When 2 Chainz on his latest album with Kanye on is like, this is the last album with Def Jam, but I'm still going home. I'm still going hard. And he's always been owning his masters. Because like 2 Chainz is that middle. Whereas he's on a major label, but he owns his masters. So that puts him a little further to Kanye, but like a little Wayne, because 2 Chainz has that corporate backing of a large label, he has more exposure.
Mm-hmm.
So Kanye doesn't have to worry about exposure. Kanye is Kanye. He can set shit off because he's Kanye.
Yeah.
He's Kanye. So corporations are going to, for now, are going to chase him. Whereas a little Wayne, he just didn't build his name like that. That's not Wayne. He's more in the cut type of dude.
Mm-hmm.
So he has to have that corporate backing. But what I'm saying is, and here's the bottom line between that. If you're not set up financially to make the moves or have the long years in your industry to make these moves, them selling their masters, or I should say Dwayne Carter selling his masters to liquidate, to signify to you that, again, opportunities are drying up. Because what your masters allow you to do, go back to your point, whenever you hear a song on FIFA or EA, they got to pay for that. So that means that you're getting revenue streams from all over. You just, for you sitting, for you, revenue is just whoever think you're hot. That's what revenue means for you. You don't have to wait. That's why Dame does direct to consumer. You're getting the whole dollar. You're not getting a bit here, a bit there. You're getting that whole dollar, but you got to do a lot more chasing.
Mm-hmm.
But we know that a lot of people don't want to chase. They want to be on a major label. And what they got to understand, when you're on a major, no one gives a damn.
Because you're on there with a bunch of...
You're a corporate employee.
You got label mates. Those are your colleagues. So...
You're a corporate employee. You're a front-facing corporate employee. You are a salesman. You are a junior salesman. Quit playing. You're a junior salesman.
And an underpaid junior salesman at that.
You know how much product they're going to ram down your throat just to pay for your marketing? Just to see if you get any traction?
And the thing about that is that I don't think people even factor in when going into those type of deals that if you are the bigger artist, in some cases, your record sales and you may be the workhorse for a team of label mates who may not necessarily be pulling all of the weight, because the institution itself is feeding everybody. And like you said, that's the difference between kind of direct to consumer. And that's a great pivot too, because I just came across the article earlier and I wasn't even really aware of it, that Kanye is allegedly saying that he's going to give back his good music artists their masters. So at the same time, you know, and Hit Boy came out and made some comments to Kanye when he first started going on the tirade and made some comments about that. You know how I feel about, like, I feel like Sci-Hi is fire. Sci-Hi should have blew up.
Sci-Hi is too good for the music.
Yeah, I would agree.
Sci-Hi is Cypher, battle, on beat, on wax, all around. Whereas even with Kid Cudi, you know I love him, Wicked Awesome. Blasted it yesterday. Kid Cudi he's not a rapper. He is a music lover that can rap.
Yeah.
That's Kid Cudi. Like, no, Kid Cudi's a music lover that can rap. And if you listen to his most recent album, he shows you is like, I love music, I just rap. I can also sing this, that, and the third. It's two different people.
I love the harmonies more than I love the raps.
Because it's two different people. It's just two different people, two different presences. But that's why I side and why I make that, because you have musicians who don't necessarily care about the business. But in rap, you got to care about the business in the bars.
You have to.
You got to care about the business in the bars, because the business finance the bars when you're going back to a certain situation. And that's why Sci-Hi being so important. I'm just saying, as you go into the article, is that he been called out Ye for his corporatism.
Ben.
Like, we gotta, that's why, and Kanye is moving into the space where now he has to play a good CEO. He has to get people to like him. Because if he doesn't get people to like him, then they don't like his brands. So no matter what he wants to say or how he wants to say it, he has to present himself in a certain manner.
Yeah, because that's the Gilded Cage of everybody wanting to, again, like we were talking about earlier, everybody want to reach a certain level, not understanding that level and that autonomy and that freedom that everybody wants comes with a certain level of responsibility and restraint. Because people think that, like, oh, well, if I do this, I can say this. It's like, look at how people respond to, especially Black men. I don't care how far you've come, you will get crucified by everybody on all different race, gender, all of that, presenting, even if it's the truth, in a way that people don't necessarily want it. So right now, Kanye kind of plays the I'm for the people rhetoric. And I feel like that's saving him somewhat. But like you said,
being Black.
Because it works.
It's a flip coin. It's a flip coin.
I agree.
It's a flip coin. People berate you as a Black man, but if they feel like you're being berated as a Black man, they're also trying to come.
Yeah, you can work it and you can maneuver it, and that's where the duplicitousness of people on all different sides come in. Because we could easily say politics is the same way when it comes to the intellectual property.
People exploit identity, and that's why I know I'm not a fan of identity politics. Because the minute identity politics come in, it's like, oh, here come the predators and colonists.
Yeah, that's how Neera Tanden skirted any criticism of her track record. The Biden's pick, and everybody brought it down to like her being a woman, and I'm like, but that don't make you good. And it's crazy because everybody, and this is off topic, went nuts about that.
It's on topic too, though.
Amy Corbett appointment, and it's like, son, they also use that same tactic, but it's like, you're a bad person. My thing is people pick and choose when they want to allow it and don't allow identity politics.
Because here's about this. It's not about, people are using identity politics the same way people use it's like flag football.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not on my team, I rip off your flag, your identity don't matter. But if you're on my team, then your identity matters. That's how it plays. That's why all the little brunch liberals, I can't wait with the little backstabby behavior come out. I thought, oh, I love it. Because what's going to happen now is that you're no longer teenagers and you're no longer in college. And some of you have started families. And because you have started families, now you have to make a choice. You have to pick whether you're for corporatism or not. You have to, because your wallet and your lifestyle.
It's choose sides 2020.
And so if you want to keep lying to your friends and your family about how you make your money and why you make your money, please shut up about morals.
Please. Because right now, we need people to move the same way you talk on Twitter.
Wait a minute.
Because it ain't working.
Are you saying that people can no longer use screens to protect themselves from their malicious behavior?
Not only can you use screens, I think it's just gross that you have a lot of people who will sit around and talk about, how bad corporatism is, how bad white male patriarchy is, how bad all of these things are, but yet and still you're willing to reinforce. And again, in this case, keeping it on point, Lil Wayne, I'm sure, sold that back into a group. Well, now I'm sure he did. It said Universal Music.
We know.
And we know.
Who runs Universal Music Group.
But
we know who runs most of the Fortune 500 companies.
But that goes, again, you don't even, when you bring up certain things, it's so pervasive that you don't really even have to discuss it because it's known, but people will.
It's like this. Common knowledge, you don't have to quote because it's common knowledge. But references that are common, you have to quote. You don't, or cite, some things you just don't have to cite. It's known. It's like we don't need a citation on that one. We know it.
This is true. And with that being said, we're going to get into your boy Ye real quick. Just because I thought it was interesting.
I'm listening.
And this is from Vibe magazine. Kanye West says he's giving good music artists back what he owns of their masters. Again, you know me. America is one giant pyramid scheme. Everything is about bringing in new people to exploit. And unfortunately, this only came in response to him trying to get his masters. So, like we said, allegedly, he say he gonna do that. But again, if your revenue streams if Yeezys don't keep selling, I don't know if you might keep that promise. But Yeezy has vowed to change the way artists are treated by record labels. After nearly 2 weeks of speaking against Universal Music Group and Sony ATV, Kanye West has promised to do his part to help artists on his good music label imprint. So that's like Pusha T, Tiana Taylor, Big Sean, I believe, is still linked into that that whole team.
He's here for help.
I'm giving all good music artists back the 50% share I have of their masters, West tweeted on Wednesday. Big Sean, who signed with West's label more than a decade ago, thanked West for the gesture. The move comes as West spoke with Billboard to further discuss his plans to free artists from oppressive record labels. The desired effect will only be achieved when every artist owns their master, said West. I'm team free artists. I'm committed to doing whatever is necessary so artists own their copyrights. The response is awesome because everyone knows this is a broken system that needs to be fixed. Currently, artists take advances to make records, and yet when they repay those advances, the record company still owns the records. West said that he is in talks with Universal and that their parent company, Vivendi, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correct, but reiterated that he wants to fix everyone's situation along with his own. My brand and influence goes way beyond just music, and that, of course, is meaningful to Vivendi, as it is to Adidas and many other conglomerates. That word. If that helps me be able to free all artists, of course I'm going to use it, West explained. You only need to look back to the early days of the record companies to see how predatory they were, he continued. Old execs admit the contracts are almost the same now. The shape, the terminology, and yet in that time, we moved to a completely digital age. Has the attitude of the labels and the structure in which our music moves on our side changed to that degree? No, it has not. You're locked in. Once you're locked in, You can ask no questions. Despite his feelings on UMGs and Sony ATV, West hasn't closed the door on working with label giants in the future. I will work with anyone who treats artists fairly and righteous. They do that. I will partner with them in bringing music to life. Now, he said something that was very interesting to me. He says that they will, once you're locked in, and then he talked about and said that from old to new, executives knew that the contracts were predatory, right? And I'm gonna dibble and dabble a little bit of politics on it because I think it's very interesting.
It might be just for people to be able to see.
I think it's
screen share.
Yeah, I think it's very interesting how, in a lot of cases, where we talk about like a Joe Biden, or we talk about the left wing of the Democratic Party, or we talk about rising stars within the Democratic Party, or just politics in general, a lot of that has to do with, you hear people say play the game, but it comes to being locked in. Because what you're doing is you're going along again with this predatory system. So everybody knows that politics is full of nepotism and cronyism, right? It is what it is. Once you enter that ecosystem and you abide by the standards and you promote and reiterate and then speak that rhetoric to people in the open, for example, what I mean is you'll have a AOC who's trying to get put on at the first part of her career, railroading against the Democratic Party and Pelosi and whatnot. And it seems to be you get rewarded, though, when you do things like go along with a bill that doesn't necessarily benefit the whole, especially because it goes against what you say your brand is. But a lot of them still have retained a certain amount of access and leverage because she's willing to also make the concessions of like, well, this is Mama Bear. I'm not going to say this. I am going to back off on Joe Biden because we came to this agreement. Like there was an article that they put out and covered her in terms of she's now saying that the truce, quote unquote, is gone. So it's like, what's the truce? What was the deal? Because now you're saying that one party, which I knew would renege on, has reneged, but what did they renege on? And bringing it back to the contracts and you just being locked in when you're going into these situations, like we just said, we know what it is. What are these artists being promised as it pertains to access, leverage, and so on and so forth, that they're willing to take or willing to neglect what we all know are predatory contracts? Because my thing is, if we all know it, he's saying it, the execs know it, then what is this truce? What's this trade-off outside of your contract that you're willing to forego that?
Okay. Whew. It took me a lot not to talk because my brain was going off. But I'm going to say it like this. This is what happened when you silence the humanities and all of us who study the humanities. I could be petty at the end of there. I should be petty at the end of there, but I'm not going to do that.
No, be petty. I need to hear it.
Because there's a lot of Anna Kareninas running around here. There's a lot of doll houses running around here. Dolls, pretty little dolls. There's a lot of princesses running around here where they're nothing but flesh treaties for powerful men. What I mean is, politicians also inherit trains of thought and ways to move. But as a humanitarian, or not a humanitarian, but as a person who studies the humanities, you begin to understand how these structures work. There are a lot of Alexis of Leo Tolstoy's War and Peace intellectual, smart, but they're not happy at home and they're happier at war. What I mean to say is that when you have an AOC reporting that she has so much power and she's over a district, she's not a senator. Her voice shouldn't be, and Omar as well. And I have people who in my circles who support them. But her presence in the news cycle is far overblown. You don't have that much power on the Hill. You're not a senator. So I know when you start talking, but I'm a Beltway kid. I understand that you're not that powerful. I understand that you got to go and talk to a bunch of other people and a bunch of other staffs. I understand that you have to compromise. I know you have to compromise. I understand that your rhetoric is at the ceiling because you're going to go to the floor. I understand what you're doing. That even goes down to Representative Omar when their line of questioning. I forgot who she was questioning. Genocide is like you as a I forgot what she was you as a United States representative is trying to hold United States accountable for its actions abroad undermines our international policy. And that's why there's a whole bunch of people, I forgot who was being interviewed, is going to absolutely agree with the person. It's like, what are you doing? That's how you want to win your base, by undermining the national security of your people? Do you think the rest of the world cares about America the way you want to care about America? This ideal left doesn't understand how people work. They're in their own version of unlogic. They're in their own version of all we got to do is care about people, and then we'll have this perfect world. We just got to hold the past accountable. But as you hold the past accountable, you got to hold yourself accountable for the present. And this is where people go, oh, the right is like, not everybody on the right is alt-right. The right matters. And what I mean by that, it counterbalances some of these fantastic thoughts that people have about if everyone is just so great. And what I mean by AOC not holding Mama Bear accountable goes back to the whole thing about the flag football analogy. Mama Bear has the same colors I have on. So I got to protect Mama Bear as she passes on to Mitch McConnell, because we know that she's not trying to get a stimulus package that's at the same levels as it was with the CARE Act. And the CARE Act, I don't care whoever says it's like, that was one of the biggest robberies of the working class. This is the problem with America, and this is what I wanted to say. This is the problem with, because we can go to April 3rd, 1964, the Battle of the Bullet, Malcolm X talking about the election and how they were runoff races. You can go there. Oh, let's even go back even further. Let's go to 1830 with Alexis de Tocqueville. And while I'm on my soapbox and I don't mind being here, I don't mind being here, because Americans need to wake up into what the rest of the world already knows. You were a trading post for Europe. The French, the English helped you with German help. Europe is getting themselves together because they got to deal with China. Mm-hmm. China is getting themselves together. India is getting themselves together, but India, because they're moving on to smartphones. Yeah. But with them moving on to smartphones with Foxconn, who does most of the Apple products and assembly, because China owns lithium, which goes into the actual metals. The batteries and stuff. And they in China, and they in Africa, and they own most of the rare earth metals that's going to be needed for the 21st century. Whether you directly deal with China or not, they have decided that they're going to have an imprint. They're going to get some money, going back to the masters. They decided we're going to own the masters to what makes the product the product. That's what China did. And America, as well as the rest of the world, is trying to find a way to pivot away from fueling their political economy, because they have used their national economy and their state-sponsored companies to build their political economy. And people are trying to pivot away from that. What people have to understand is that your geopolitical leaders, your top echelon, your elites in your neighborhoods, your ones that are ahead of these corporations, they don't have the bandwidth to think about the average American. They got to fight the elites that are not American. Yeah. There's European and Asian elites, and I'm gonna get on my soapbox with this one. It's like this is why it's so important for you to understand you're not Dwayne Carter. We can talk about his masters, but you will never have $100 million in your life. Why aren't you talking about your children and what they need?
Mm-hmm.
Why are you when you give your attention to things like this, what I mean like this, like the masters and not being able to connect it the way we're connecting it, then you're not seeing how the market is signifying that time, a struggle is coming. And it's going to hit you first because you're poor, not rich.
Nah, and that's a great point. You know, and talking about how China basically weaponized capitalism against itself and entrenching itself in every level of the supply chain. I thought it was amazing. I remember you sent me a video, I think Steve Bannon or one of the diplomats who was having a conversation with a gentleman about his experience in China as it relates to the businesses. I can't remember.
I watched so many of them.
But it was really good. And I listened to him and I was like, wow, that was spectacular, you know, in terms of the East one up in the West. Because now, like you said, they have that issue. And when we're talking about masters, like you said, and we're talking about liquidating, even when people get to talking about stocks, you know, it's like understanding that is attached to a whole ecosystem. Like we were talking earlier about the Airbnb and you know that going public and it exploding. But again, a lot of people don't understand when we talk about being locked in that exploitative nature of whether it be the music industry and how they contract, it being understood. Like Americans
Did I get to that point?
Yeah.
I did inadvertently.
Like Americans will go and say, yeah, we know what it is, but we're going to pick the lesser evil. Not understanding that it is just, and it really is not, the degrees aren't so much different now because to the point of like stocks and all of that, people will invest in a particular stock, not look into the business model of the corporation and how they fuel it.
You're a value investor. I'm listening. Go ahead. Like, that's what they call you. You're a value investor.
It's dangerous though, because you'll have people who, for example, you'll have people who will get out here and talk about, well, oh, I'm for workers' rights and I'm for, you know, all of these different things and support a candidate like Bernie Sanders, but then you'll also invest in a company like Uber, like a Jay-Z. And yes, you can do it, but what you aren't understanding, especially as a small user, because we're talking about everyday people who are trying to access this now, you feeding into that, your small share, the top is so heavy.
They don't care.
You can't compete. And what happens is you create this cycle, this vicious cycle of now we have another conglomerate or corporation on our hand who is cornering the political market and further entrenched, and the corporation now is further entrenching because all corporations are, I wouldn't say on each other's side, they compete, but when it pertains to politics being under the politics being undermined, they because they're trading,
they're on the same plane.
Each other.
They're on the same plane.
Like we're trading
policy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the politicians are in a whole nother landscape of it because they become tools in themselves.
But that again goes back to, my bad for cutting you off, but I just wanted to put imagery. It goes back to just because we aren't called serfs doesn't mean we aren't serfs.
Yeah.
It goes back to understanding that industrialists at the turn of the 20th century were nobodies. And then the nobles, because they were broke, they were land-owned gentry who got broke, basically corporations, to bring it back home. And to talk about what Kanye and them are doing, is that revenue streams, you gotta understand revenue streams. Kanye is not as big as Adidas, then that's why he's not on the board.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the best way to put it. Like Kanye has his presence is huge, and he's not on the board of it. And so you think that you're going to change, and because California challenged Uber and Lyft.
Yeah, and people voted it down.
And people voted it down. It's like,
Crazy.
if you are unable to understand that the labor and capital has not changed in America, that relationship has not changed, and people are like, oh my God, no, you're socialist. It's like, no, look at Germany. In Germany, they have contracts. Japan, they have contracts. These are not ideal models, but what I'm saying is that you can be in a capitalist society that has contracts with your employees. That's what I'm making a correlation in.
Yeah.
Not that they're epitomes of anything. But to your point, bro, a lot of people aren't driving home that they are not those people. They just think that, oh, I'm going to manage my way on the network. These are families. These is how I'm
small dynasties.
I'm put it like this. The Obamas' children have these fights. You would never have these fights.
And their fight is to actually get in because they're not in yet. And that's a whole nother conversation because I'm gonna move forward because we close on time.
Gotcha.
But next, the article that we're gonna bring up is from Gabrielle Union, and she, spoke some real truth. And a lot of people tried to skirt it, didn't really talk about it, and then you had some people kind of like shaming her, undermining her as an average person, just saying, "Oh, well, you don't know this and you don't know that," or you need to manage better.
Okay.
Or you need to be more, ambitious. But let's get into it because it was crazy. And she says, Black entertainers are 1 or 2 paychecks away from being broke. I'm not going to play the video, but she shared her opinion on how Black celebrities are being impacted by the ongoing coronavirus pandemic. Again, Corona has shifted a lot of different things. During an Instagram live session with model Sharon Denise, Union explained for all of the Oprahs and the people who have just a lot of money, most of us are 1 or 2 checks. Most of us are 1 or 2 checks away from not having money to pay for all of our things. You know what I mean? And again, to keep it in context, this is Gabrielle Union, an acclaimed actress, saying this. And she's not saying that she's the Oprah with a lot of money. Because as we all see, she's kind of referring also to herself. So this stoppage of work and money is impacting marginalized celebrities the most, she said.
Celebrity. I'm a celebrity, but I'm marginalized. I'm famous, but not
that famous.
Okay.
Trump famously says that. Yeah, you may be famous, but I'm the president. I got money too. But it says, like all the influencers you see take all the trips. They're in Dubai, 1 week they're in London, and the next week they're in Paris. They seem to be everywhere. They may not have a lot of liquid income, and you can charge your rent. Charge it. She's talking about swiping, no swiping with the credit. So if you don't have the opportunity to do all those things, you need to be the influencer. Your money's funny. And if your money is funny, you don't have much of anything, she added. Gabby added, I think a lot of people need to understand the difference between fame and having money. And I think this quarantine is really revealing a lot in terms of a lot of people who are famous that don't have wealth. The mother and wife of retired NBA star Dwayne Wade also took the time to speak about importance in self-love. We're not going to get into that today, but she said a lot.
She's pivoting into a different market. I like it.
I don't think it'll work.
She's a Candace Owens competitor.
With that being said, though,
I'm listening.
You had Tisha Campbell suing Dwayne Martin, and she got $7 to her name.
I try my best not to laugh.
It's okay. Because they blaming black men. They blaming her husband. There's this other guy who, the dark-skinned dude who does the little funny videos or whatever, but he was also talking about, being poor even though he is gaining fame. I say that to say, it's not just us, because a lot
Jay
of people.
Versace, the one that
I think so.
the short bush.
I think I think it's him or the other one, the more flamboyant one.
Was the one that was walking down the street?
No, this is the more flamboyant one who speaks in a flamboyant way. He's dark skinned, fashion dude, fashion guy. He be dressing. He was on the cover.
Smith.
Nah, I'll figure out his name. But
he's flamboyant. I'm listening now.
I say all that to say, or at least ask, what is it that is going to get people to listen? Because we see it, people are saying it, people are coming out and talking about it, but yet and still we have people who are aspiring and foregoing fighting for and advocating for a specific policy as it relates to the noun, because they believe that they will one day come out of this quote unquote poverty.
Okay, stop thinking that you're going to be Will Smith, who has the rich uncle and go live at his rich uncle house. We baby kid. We don't die, we multiply. We going back home to the hood. When the amusement park is over, you know what the fuck you going.
Yeah. And the amusement park is about to be over.
Yes. Do I have to put it more plainly than that? Because I'm at the point of
the fun time is definitely about.
I'm at the point of like, no, I'm really, because Dave Chappelle said it on SNL.
What he said?
About how white people aren't prepared for it. They need black people to teach them how, because it's about poverty and being poor. And then with the deconstruct joke you sent me about with the woman that didn't want to work with the poor white farmer.
Oh yeah,
because she was white. And then how when they played the whole tape, found out, because that's going to happen. People want to start listening to whole tapes and not just little snippets and sound bites. Because you got Al Jazeera, who has a whole program, the listening post, about how the news is reported. So the news is now reporting on the news, because Fox be reporting on CNN. So the infighting is happening on that corporate level. And the fight for the narrative is what's happening right now, even with the Tisha Campbell. But the whole thing, because I actually have conversations with women outside of, these fake feminists, these PC bros. You know what I'm talking about. South Park. Because even South Park talked about China and how everything was being made for China. So we're not, all of this is related. Going back to Gabrielle Union. Gabrielle Union is revealing that when Monique came out and talked about things, she wasn't lying to you all.
Not to cut you off.
No, don't cut me off.
Did you see, what's the girl, Tiffany Haddish? She
was running.
She came in for Netflix right now.
Of course she is. She don't want to go back to that car.
But they offered her $0 to do some type of awards.
But that's what happened when you cut Monique off.
Yep, I agree.
That's what happened, because she was one of the people that ran block for that. That's what happens when you allow somebody call you, and this is what Dane be talking about. When you allow somebody to call you, Dane and Joe Budden be talking about this. These executives, because what people don't understand about corporations is that they go through people too. Mm-hmm. So the brand may stay the same, but it depends on who's there at the time. And it's about who's there at the time. Because even we don't even have to keep it in the sphere of black people. Did you see Variety with Dune? Where 18, because the director of Dune was upset because HBO Max is releasing at the same time. Yeah, and he was saying it was ruining the theater industry.
I saw that.
Because of how much money it spent and took and how these projects will happen. So it's not just happening to black people.
That's what that Warner Brothers collab did.
Yeah, it was in Variety. Mm-hmm. And he came out and attacked that. It's like, y'all got to pay attention to how, damn, son, people with money, bread, and access, they shit getting taken too. So if they getting taken, then who's doing the taking, son? Who robbing who? Who was like, son, you ain't got it like that, Slim. I'm gonna need that.
Let me get that.
Who, if I'm serious, like I'm joking at this point in time, but if AT&T is telling Warner Brothers, like, nah, son, we need that off you. If Disney has to go, we're gonna put Disney ESPN together. If you have these corporations that you look up to, these brands that you look up to, that you aspire to be, having to make deals, and we saw it first in fast fashion.
Yeah.
We saw it first
and in fast fashion.
They fashion
that consumer race get a conversation.
Because fashion, the thing about fast fashion is that fast fashion, streaming, and all of it, because
trash.
What's going to happen? Consumer behavior has to change. The consumption rate has to change.
What?
Yes.
You telling me
yes.
that I am right when I say that you can't have a discussion about
quality,
global warming and things like that if the consumer
isn't
willing to restrain themselves?
Not only more than that, if the consumer isn't willing to demand more of themselves, we demand more of our materials than we demand of ourselves to appreciate the materials. I don't drink wine with people who are less mature than the wine they drink. I don't. I don't drink wine with people who rather talk about how much the wine is. It's like, I didn't have $300 bottle of wine. I didn't have 30 bottle of wine. I didn't have 18 bottle of wine. You know what the best thing about wine? The people you fucking drinking it with. I don't care. And that's the problem that we have. And we got to get past it. I'm going at millennials now. A lot of y'all ain't deep. A lot of y'all don't pay attention to shit. And most of y'all just obey authority. And we got to get out of that.
We could do a whole episode.
We can, but I'm going to jump off my soapbox. I'm going to hop in this car real quick. And what I'm going to say this is that what's going to really happen in America is that what austerity does. Austerity makes you trim the fat. And you got to see what really matters, what you really care about, because you really can't afford it and you never could.
With that being said, we appreciate everybody for coming out. If you're still watching, if you stayed to the end, can you like the video? Thank you. We appreciate that. And then also, can you share the video? We appreciate that. Again, we just trying to use our voice and the information that we have to have conversations, create dialogue, create discourse, because we're living in an era, in an age where censorship is upon us, where mass wealth calcification is upon us, and the dialogue and the discourse is going to be one of the first things that are attacked, because it is the dialogue and the discourse that has to happen to bring about the changes that we want to see. So if you're watching, please help the brother out. Just share it, like it. We slowly building as we go. We're going to try to have some more things coming for you all. I've just finished my survey that I'm gonna put out as it relates to that week MORE Act. I believe that's the name of it, in regard to the legalization of marijuana.
I gotta get more to that. I saw you posted that.
And I got the document and everything like that. But what I'm gonna do is solicit acts from people, and then on top of that, have my own policy prescriptions, and then we can maybe do a quick episode, just going through the language and going through the whole bill and how we should look at bills and how we should decipher them. And again, y'all always know my favorite thing to do is to first go to the definitions of every bill. But with that being said, we're gonna be out. Again, shout out to the cuz, it's her birthday. We about to head out. And y'all be safe. We will catch y'all next week. As of now, nothing has came up. But much love. Enjoy your holiday. Be safe. Stay COVID free. And it's all love. Until next time.